Hello, everybody. It's David Bilal here with the Akai Tribune, and I want to have a quick off the cuff discussion about this term FBA. Now, it's been a term thrown around in some seemingly largely right wing black circles, quite frankly. It is a term denoting black lineage, meaning focusing on victims of slavery, American slavery, and that resistance to slavery, and people making a distinction between Black Americans and American slavery versus Black Americans not within slavery within America, specifically the United States. I'm talking about. So these FBA people say, "Oh well, we're different than Jamaicans. We're different than people in the Caribbean. We're different than people in Africa. We're different than people in South America." Oh, which is true, right? I'll give them that. We are a unique national identity in the United States, formed from the flames and the fire of the American slave system. Now, my problem is with FBA, which is Foundation of Black Americans, is that it is a very much American centric ideology, right? So what we have is basically right wing black nationalism, not focused on white people, not focused on fighting for national liberation, not focused on developing black culture or sovereign black political, economic, and social development. We have an ideology, essentially, the FBA, which is very American centric, meaning we are the foundation of Black Americans. We quote unquote built this country, whatever the fuck that means. Like saying a slave built the country. We were, in my opinion, we were unwilling subjects in this country. We unwillingly built this country. But saying we built this country and wanting to be a part of the subjugation system is just ridiculous to me. All right, so that's one problem I have is that they want to be American. In many respects, they are kind of the MAGA black nationalists, I would call them, and that they like the deportations, they like the horrific shit that the Trump administration is doing to our own black brothers and sisters from the Caribbean, from Africa, etc. Specifically with this Haitian problem too. I mean, these Haitians, they went through the fires of the French slave system. Some of us people here too. I'm in Louisiana. Some of our people in Louisiana went through the exact same system. If you read W.E.B. Du Bois' Black Reconstruction, the system of slavery in Louisiana was actually not too similar, unsimilar than the system of slavery in the Caribbean, but I digress. So they say that our Haitian brothers and sisters, well, they're completely different people, and if they get deported, it's something that's perfectly fine, or we don't care about this, or it's not our problem. You see a lot of this within the discussion of this supposed quote unquote Black Panther group in Philadelphia. Though my issues with them aside, they have chosen the correct line in the ICE situation. That's my problem. That's my other problem with them too. So they want to be pro. They want to be Americans. They are pro America. They're pro being a part of America. They want to be a part of the American Empire and get the spoils of the American Empire. Then simultaneously, they want to ostracize other people who also went through the U.S. Went through the slave systems. It may not be the specifically the American slave system, but they're like, all right, well, we don't care about people in the Caribbean. We don't care about people in Africa. We don't care about people in Latin America. Even though they may go through some of the exact same stuff we go through, like people in Jamaica, stay still enslaved by the English. You know, they say, oh, we're three different people and we have to be divisive. We have to be a dividing line. Now, that's not necessarily what I disagree with, right? I mean, there are fundamental differences culturally and historically, but there's also extreme amounts of similarity. For instance, Marcus Garvey, right? Probably the greatest person, greatest black nationalist in American history, was Jamaican, and he saw there was no difference between people in Jamaica and people here for him, right? So when we talk about FBA and the Black Agenda Report made a very good article about this actually, which I'll put that in the description. Is that what these people call foundational Black Americans weren't themselves even quote unquote Black Americans, whatever that means, right? What we call like Harriet Tubman, was probably what 2 or 3 generations out from the African slave trade. I mean, hell, Nat Turner's mother was straight up, I believe, Senegalese, or at the very least, she was some sort of West African. She was literally transported on a slave ship. That's Nat Turner. Um, I mean, W.E.B. Du Bois, right? I mean, his father, I believe, was from the Caribbean. I believe was Haitian. Don't quote me on that, but I'm pretty sure he was from the Caribbean as well. So a lot of people that even in our foundational, I guess, historical mythos, or whatever you want to call it, or historical lineage, are themselves migrants or are themselves, unwilling, enslaved Africans. Right. So what the FBA people, and this is the problem with the FBA people, right? I don't don't disagree with their idea that there must be specificity within, particularly when it comes down to the African American, right? The New African. And I'll get to the term New African in a little bit. I don't disagree with their idea that we need specificity. My issue is that they have an ahistorical understanding of what Black America is, right? So we are celebrating the resistance. As core, the most you can say about FBA is that we are celebrating our resistance to the American Empire. There's a contradiction there. These figures that resisted the American Empire, Harriet Tubman, W.E.B. Du Bois, Malcolm X, right? Number one, they would disagree wholeheartedly on this whole idea that we have to, at the very least, tribalize ourselves within the American Empire. Within the American Empire, but they themselves too are not right. Full, whether it means full-blooded FBA or whatever, right? Most of them have ancestry to people who were not born in this country. Number one, and number two, this country is a settler colony, right? You don't see like white people doing this shit because they understand what white means, right? To be white is to be. You can be from Poland, and all of a sudden you come to the United States, you're considered white, you're considered safe. And what they try to do with FBA people is ignore the racialization aspect within the American Empire. So they apply race, and the problem with that is, right? We can go into this whole concept of race be abolished, race should be abolished, or should race, continue or something. We can go into that whole debate. But the issue is, especially here, if you have a correct historical understanding, you know that us, us in America, African Americans, I've always needed allies to get anywhere, right? I mean, fundamentally, the civil rights movement, there was a whole host of movements happening within the global South that were criticizing and they were supporting the civil rights movement within the United States, which morphed into the human rights movement and the national liberation movement. And those couldn't really get off the ground unless those movements in the global South were also within communication with movements here. Right, case in point, Malcolm X was a perfect example. He outlined this very clearly with his strong sentiment of nationalism. Even the slave system, right? That couldn't have been about, like, the slave trade was abolished for a reason in the United States. It was because of the Haitian Revolution. Read some Gerald Horne, read some W.E.B. Du Bois, read some, you know, just read. That's the problem with these FBA people, right? They don't fucking read. But so, a lot of the gains we've made historically that have been solely attributed to quote unquote FBA people who themselves aren't really, to their own definition, FBA. A lot of those gains did not come strictly from us, right? They came from movements preceding those historical movements, like the abolition of slavery in the United States. There was in conjunction with large support in Europe for abolition of slavery, the abolitionist struggles in the North, the risk of slave insurrections that happened throughout the Caribbean that required this massive police state in the South that was just unsustainable. And also, of course, I think what's core to it is, of course, the actions of people who were the enslaved Africans within South Carolina, within the South. Um, so they view basically Black American history in a vacuum, which I think is a fundamental error, and that will do nothing but harm us. And this is where the core of my hostility toward the FBA comes from. They have a historical understanding of Black history. They think we did everything in a vacuum. They believe that there was no genealogical, historical communication with peoples across the Caribbean, and fundamentally, they are the magnification of Black nationalism. Essentially, case in point, they are pro-American empire, pro-American imperialist, quote unquote Black nationalist, whatever that means in that context. Meaning they don't want to change the American system. I don't even think they even want reparations, right? Because what does reparations even look like? Is it cash payments? My definition of reparations is land for a nation, building a Black nation. There was it cash payments to spend money to have white stores in order to fund white billionaires or build a Black capitalist class for the American empire. All right, so I'll point the definition of reparations is questionable. So it's the same problem that we saw in the 60s, that we're integrating into a burning building, which is the American Empire, which is on the verge of, if not collapse, disintegration. It's becoming increasingly fascistic. And instead of trying to fight it, instead of trying to build coalitions, Instead of trying to connect with people, they want these FBA people want to fracture uh, us in the United States and isolate and all us the African American isolate us from other movements, which makes us much more vulnerable. These people are actually actively harming us by trying to make us in the African American community here, or New African community, which is a term I support more broadly. They want to actively harm us by isolating us. Because fundamentally, we are a fairly weak people. Let's be honest here. We are fairly weak people. We don't have much power inside the American Empire. Barely have control of communities because we're so colonized mentally. In FBA, I think it's a symptom of that mental colonization. So, at this point in history, right, when we have ICE paramilitary running around, you have these stupid Negroes around here saying we shouldn't do anything about ICE, even though we are very high on the chopping block. These white nationalists don't give a damn about niggas. I don't know what the fuck y'all talking about. ICE cannot go after niggas. They will. All right, I don't understand this shit. All right, it's just people just idiots and don't know how to fucking read or something. I'm getting pissed off here. Don't know how to read history. This paramilitary, this right wing white nationalist paramilitary, will be going after us sooner or later. All right, and instead of building community, instead of building coalitions, instead of building power, we have these FBA freaks. That's what they are, freaks, running around here talking a whole bunch of dumb shit, trying to get us more and more isolated. So when the time comes to actually fight, we're fucked. That's my fundamental problem with these people. So what is an alternative here? My alternative is pretty clear. It's the new African identity, right? Instead of saying we want to, what I want for us as a people is for us to retract from the American Empire, retract from Americanism. These FAA people want to delve head first into Americanism. I say the opposite. We need to become, we need to disengage from Americanism, right? That was the solution that Malcolm X put out, right? And that solution rings true throughout history. Is that fundamentally we need to separate. We need to separate from the American Empire, separate from Americanism, separate from this disgusting, parasitic, destructive system. And instead of integrating into it as the FBA people want to, and isolating ourselves and attaching ourselves to this MAGA movement as a lot of these people want to, we must become like our own people and advocate for sovereign economic, political, and cultural development, which is the fundamental goal of the New African movement. And with the New African movement as well, another key difference is highlighting resistance to American imperialism as it is, as from the American Empire, as it is, and not make it like, oh, we built, not necessarily like a we built this country type of understanding of Black history, but oh, we've become unwilling participants in the building of the country, and we should celebrate the resistance to our unwilling participation. For instance, Harriet Tubman, she didn't build this country; she resisted. All right, this country's building, this country being built essentially. All right, because former slave woman, underground railroad. It was slavery that built the country. She resisted the thing that built this country. Right. So it highlights resistance as not like resistance. Like it's definitely it's almost a totalitarian like double thing with these people. That resistance toward the American Empire by us, by people like Marcus Garvey, Harriet Tubman, uh, you know, Du Bois, Du Bois, um, the activists in the 50s and 60s, 70s, as saying we want to be, instead of that being highlighted as we want to fight against the empire, the American empire, American uh, uh, situation that we're in. They take it in a whole different direction and say, no, we want to integrate into this burning building. We want to integrate into this fire. So I think that's fundamentally it. The new African identity, I believe, is saving us and ourselves from a decrepit building and a decrepit house that will catch on fire. And as we see now, is burning down. So the difference is now is twofold. Do we want to delve into a house fire like the FBA people want us to, and isolate ourselves and integrate closely with the person that's burning down their own house, or do we want to separate and do we want to build our own house? Do you want to go back on the plantation? Or do you want to go off the plantation? And that's the fundamental difference between these two identities. The FBA people want to be on the plantation, but they want a higher status on the plantation. While the New African identity, New African Revolutionary says we must separate ourselves from this plantation system. And so to conclude, those are my thoughts on the FBA identity. It's complete dumb shit. I hate it. I hate it with the most intense hatred. Yeah, it's just more evidence that niggas just don't know how to read. It pisses me off. Nobody's read a book before. Nobody reads history anymore. And it shows in this entire fucking movement. I'm getting sick of it. So I'll link the article to Black Agenda Report in the description. Read it. It's a good article. And please just read basic history, understand basic facts. Don't just go on the internet. Go on the internet and just start screaming out dumb shit. Because essentially what these people do. Thank you.
Revolution is in Asia. Revolution is in Africa. And the white man is screaming because he sees revolution in Latin America. How do you think he'll react to you when you learn what a real revolution is? You don't know what a revolution is. If you did, you wouldn't use that word. A revolution is bloody. Revolution is hostile. Revolution knows no compromise. Revolution overturns and destroys everything that gets in its way. And you sitting around here like a knot on the wall saying, I'm going to love these folks no matter how much they hate me. No, you need a revolution. Who ever heard of a revolution where they lock arms, as Reverend Cleage was pointing out beautifully, singing, we shall overcome? Just tell me you don't do that in a revolution. You don't do any singing, you're too busy swinging. It's based on land. A revolutionary wants land so he can set up his own nation, an independent nation. These Negroes aren't asking for no nation. They're trying to crawl back on the plantation.